So welcome everybody. I have here, I can say, community leaders who want to volunteer to share their knowledge with you guys. Remember, I have been doing webinars like this, talking about how to become data analyst or machine learning or AI engineers in the past, but I used to do them alone. But this time around, we have other experts who have joined us to share their ideas, their point of views, and you'll also get the different paths. And at the end, we hope you will have a lot of questions for them. So I'm happy. I'm just going to start with Alex. Alex, can you briefly tell us a bit about yourself? And we are going to go around. I'm just going through using the alphabet.
Mhm.
You know, nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. So my name's Alex Kearns. I'm a principal solutions architect based in the UK at a consultancy called Ubertas Consulting. I'm AWS community builder and run my local user group as well, along with a co-organizer. Really passionate about sharing with the community, especially around data and AI. Um, yeah, really excited to share what I know with you all today.
Thanks, Alex. Following the alphabet, Daria. Yeah.
Sh-
And you, yes,
Okay.
lovely.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daria, and I'm a Poland-based data scientist working in an oil and gas company, but I work mostly now with generative AI solutions, analyzing documents. So it's part of generative AI, part of NLP. But I was previously a data analyst, and I'm actually a career switcher. And because I was switching from a economic and management background to data science and data analytics. So I know the struggles of how to switch and change your path completely. That's why I'm enjoying sharing my knowledge and helping out the community.
Yeah. Thanks, Daria.
Thank you.
Here I see Francesco is going next. I don't know, this alphabet seems to be messed up somehow, but Francesco.
Hello, everybody. Thanks a lot for organizing this, Cyril. So I'm Francesco. I'm a machine learning engineer based in Brussels. I'm Italian originally. I work for Bolt, a ride-hailing company from Estonia. So what about me? I'm a machine learning hero, AWS machine learning hero. I am a chemist originally, so I guess like a failed chemist. I started as a business analyst, so then switched like to data science and machine learning, and so like super happy to be here and share a little bit about my journey and my learnings.
Yeah, thanks. Brian, you go next. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, thanks for organizing this, Cyril. Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Brian. I am from the very cold part of Boston. It went down to like 18 degrees, so I'm freezing. If it doesn't look like I'm cold, I'm very cold. So I'm excited that for this panel because I came into this industry actually completely not focused on data. I actually was doing a lot of things in creative industry. So I used to work in public relations and social media and went to a hackathon, got hooked on learning how to build apps. And then I was so surprised at how important data was for building applications. And recently, I've been doing a lot of stuff with data lakes and basically architecting ways to query like large data sets for clients. And through this whole process, ended up building my own company, which is called Tech Stack Playbook. And it's kind of like blending education and teaching people how to build with also building for companies. And I've learned a lot from like the educator side to the building side of just like you always need to think about the schemas for your data models and all these things. I'm really excited to talk about that as well. And I'm also an AWS DevTools hero, so I just love being able to talk about infrastructure as code and architecting good ways to work with your data. But yeah, thanks for organizing this, Sarah. I'm really excited for the conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much again. Thanks for all you bringing your talents and your knowledge and experience. I have a field chemist with me. I have people from economics background. I have a company owner. I have Alex who is done lots of stuffs with these architecting. So I think we have a well-rounded panel, and I'm hoping those listening would ask a lot of questions because we'll allocate some time for questions. But keep your questions coming. My eyes are on the comments. I see, for example, Ande is saying hello from Cameroon, Douala. So keep the comments coming. They are here to answer your questions. So let's go straight. Daria, I would like to ask you this. What inspired you to pursue a career in data analytics?
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question because yeah, I wasn't sure that I was tailored for data and computer science related path or career. So I started my journey as a manager, and at some point I realized that I hit the ceiling and I didn't have nothing excited to I didn't have anything excited to learn. And that was time when I started having my kids. So first I got married, then I started having my kids. And it was a great time to pause a little bit and rethink about my journey. And I thought that I always somehow were obsessed with structures and data, whether it's like foreign language or representing like my university studies notes in the form of tables. And I thought, why not? Why not to dig into the like natural language processing and data related structures? So that's how I found out about data science. And I'm really grateful that now we have a lot of online resources, a lot of like courses, books, like everything is available online. And I was living in a small town. I had no access to anything like any college or university to go to. So I took advantage of these online learning opportunities. And that's how I just started educating myself.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. So you had to learn on your own, and now, yeah, we are going to talk about some of the resources that are available later on, but I believe that energy, that challenge to learn on your own also made you become more dedicated in what you're doing. And yeah, that's interesting. So, Francesco, I'm coming back to you. I mean, you're interesting. Why do you say you're a failed chemist, and how did you fail and succeed in your failure and got into business analytics? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
well, why am I failed chemist? That's a good question. I don't know. It's just that, I'm not a chemist anymore, I guess. So that's why I'm saying that I'm a failed chemist. So I actually worked in chemistry for a couple of years after college. So that's good. But then, I realized it was not for me, and I wanted like to change, just, career switch. And so I stumbled upon. I actually started to code. It was not like coding at all. So I said, okay, so let me learn Python. And then, back in the day, I was like, okay, I gotta learn Python, but then I need a use case, I guess. You just don't open a book and read. I want to like just do something. So, okay, what now? What? And I stumble upon by pure chance. I stumble upon machine learning course, the machine learning course by Andrew Ng. I don't know how to pronounce it. Like the Coursera guy, obviously. And it was like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. There's like a robot on the cover of the course. Let's go for it. Like robots are cool. And that's how it started, and then I told myself, well, okay, well, that's time probably like start applying for some jobs, and like failed all interviews literally, up until, because I was applying for data scientist. And then, like this business analytics role came up at Amazon, and I don't know why they hired me, but it happened. So I was like, oh my God, that's happening. So I true stories that I wanted to get into data science. But business analytics happened first, and I guess it was like best thing could happen. It could happen to me because I started like learning the data part of the data science, which is pretty cool. And that's how I got started, and that's why I failed as a chemist, I guess.
Okay, I know, but you didn't fail really, because would you say, do you think, when looking back, do you think it was a good decision failing as a chemist? Do you think so?
I'm not sure if filling as a chemist was a good decision, but definitely it was a good decision to come to start as a business analyst for sure. I mean, the naming is also like very weird because I can't it's data analyst, business analyst. I don't know. Like at the end of the day, I was playing around with data, and it was like it was like a great decision because I was doing SQL pretty much all day. I knew nothing about SQL. I was forced to do it in Excel, the kind of like basic tools, which at the end of the day they pay dividends. The kind of knowledge that pays dividends like in the long term. So I'm super glad that I did that first, because then the science part of data science came later, and it was really good.
Okay, that's interesting. So I would like to ask this question to Brian. Brian, what do you think are the foundational skills for someone who wants to start as a data analyst in 2025? What are some of the skills from your idea? And I'm also going to throw this around the table because I really want us to get the idea of what are the core skills for someone who wants to start as a data analyst. So Brian, you want to go first, or Alex, you want to go first, or who wants to go first? Anybody wants to go first? Yeah, I would like to go around.
That's a big question. Does
Yeah,
anybody
it's
else
a
want to go
good
first?
question, and I would love it to go around, right? Yeah,
I'm most happy to like kick it off and we can all kind of like what is it, popcorn it up and just have like different people share insights. But I would
yeah,
say the best way to get started is maybe this might be a little bit disruptive of an answer, but I feel like the best way to have a plan is to not have a plan. And I got into data through finding out that I needed skills for abilities that I didn't have. And what ended up happening was I'll give you like a great example. So and I'll make this like super, super simplified because this was obviously not what I built for a client. But like think about like a to-do app, right? Let's say that you log in, you set up authentication, users are adding all these to-dos, and then maybe there's certain categories. So let's say from like an app developer perspective, you want to understand like what are the types of categories that people are making to-dos about. And let's say that this is the new year, new me. You want to understand like are people creating New Year resolutions to-dos? Well, if you're saving all that data in DynamoDB, you're going to need to like do scans off of that all the time. So what you might want to do is make a data lake to then be able to then do like big queries off of like a lot of data at once. And you think about that and you're like, wait, a data lake, data warehouse. Like you read all these blogs about this, but then you're like, what in the world is a data lake, a data warehouse? That's where I feel like the skill where if you're coming from this as a software engineer and you want to really get into data, it's understanding like where does data accumulate? What are the types of insights that you can glean from that data? And then the most important question of all is why would that data matter? Because like you can get data for your users, so like query my items by my ID. So like I want like all of my to-dos as a user. But then like from an engineering perspective, you might want to query all of your users. So even just like that is a very like simple example is something where those are engineering skills for data. And I feel like if you can learn how to again kind of like find out where does data accumulate, what can you glean from that data? And then why would that matter? Use the why does that matter as a wrapper. I feel like those are the questions that I would want to encourage other people to ask because then you'll be able to think like, okay, well, maybe I need this type of database to be able to do this. Like maybe Francesca, like you were just talking about how like you needed to use SQL. So I found out that like I needed to learn SQL because if you're going to do kind of like you're saving data into like NoSQL database, you might want to use like a glue data crawler to like query data from S3. So you pump database to an object in S3, like object bucket, then you use glue and then you use Athena to like query all that data. But you're going to need SQL, you're going to need to understand like cloud engineering, you're going to need to learn quite a few things, which can seem kind of overwhelming. So I do feel like the best skills to learn is like what what do I need to get from some sort of data question? And then that will sort of train you to be like, do I need to accumulate this in some place? Do I need to like pipe this data to another place to then query it? Do I need SQL? And I think like SQL is a skill that took me a really long time to learn, but it's really important. But if you learn SQL without the data context, it feels very like I'm learning skills that don't connect to anything. So you sort of want to go in stages, I think, and you just want to ask yourself like, why does this matter? Why do I need to do this? But I'm really curious. I don't know if that's like a disruptive answer for the question.
No, it's interesting because amongst the listeners, we also have software engineers. We have people who want to move from maybe a app building perspective, full stack to data, and they're trying to understand how do I get there. And at the same time, we also have complete beginners from economics, from chemistry, from biology, from other consulting, from other fields. So, Alex, can you also share some insight on what you feel might be some of the foundational skills that someone needs to become a data analyst?
Yeah, I think probably the one that sums it up for me is curiosity. It's you need to feel like you want to get something out of the data. Data is everywhere, right? I mean, there is almost nothing that I can think of that doesn't have an element of data attached to it. And I think actually one of the best ways to start experimenting with data, start finding what you can extract from it, the insights you can glean from data, is to solve your own problems. So at the start of a career, maybe you're looking to change into data as a career. Maybe you are studying at the moment and you want to kind of pivot to a different area in tech. Finding problems in your daily life and solving them relating to data is kind of how I have learned kind of all manner of technologies, really. So if I give you one example, I do a fair bit of public speaking as well as blog posts. And as part of that, there's a real need to kind of try and keep up with AWS releases. And AWS releases in the early days of AWS, you could maybe get away with reading the blog once a week, and you could kind of just rely on the fact that there were maybe 10, 15 articles and you could scan through by eye. When you look at the end of 2024, there was something like 500 or so announcements between the end of October and the end of 2024. So for me, I took that as an opportunity to build my own little RSS feed reader that would take those AWS What's New announcements, use generative AI to summarize them, and make a suggestion on how they could be turned into a talk or a blog post. In my case, specifically relating to the AWS Well Architect framework. And that was a way where you start to kind of break that problem down and you think about, okay, where do I need to store data? And as Brian was then saying, once you start finding the points that data comes into that process, you then identify the skills, technologies that you need to learn in order to be able to solve that problem. Kind of touching on that point of specific technologies, I'm a kind of firm believer in concepts and kind of design principles, best practices are worth more than specific technologies. Specific technologies come and go. Some of them, when you look at SQL, for example, SQL is a standard, but there are lots of different dialects of SQL. But underneath, the concept is pretty similar across most of them. If you were to look at other things, so say you went kind of really niche on maybe DynamoDB, then DynamoDB has its own quirks, has its own benefits, has its own drawbacks. If you focus on NoSQL as a concept, then a lot of the things you learn in relation to DynamoDB could also be applied to other databases that are similar. So I think whilst there's a lot of benefit in learning theory, there is also an awful lot, probably more benefit in the solving problems and finding things that you can build, get hands on. Certifications are one of those things that people always talk about, and there's kind of different ways to view it. I think they at an early stage in career, or if you are new to the field, they're a really good way to to make you stand out a little bit on a pile of CVs. If you are studying to pass the certification rather than studying to learn the skills for that job role, you don't necessarily get as much from them in comparison to learning enough about the topic that you could pass the certification rather than learning that AWS asks questions in a particular way.
Okay, sounds good. So we've talked a lot about curiosity, and data is everywhere. So you know that that also automatically means that with data you can apply your knowledge to your data skills can apply your knowledge to so many industries because almost every industry has data somewhere. So I would like to find out from let me start with Daria. So can you tell us some of the tools? Let's say I'm a beginner and I want to learn, I want to get into data analysis. Are there some tools, last talking of tools, are there some tools I need to learn and to be able to say, okay, I can now start working as a data analyst or put on my CV or things like that? Yeah.
That's a tricky question, I would say, because because the definition of data analyst could like change depending on the company and the industry, I guess. But I guess the core, like I wanted to share one story like from my past because recently I was doing some cleaning in my drawers and I found like a to-do list from several years ago where I put down my skills that I already knew and skills I was going to learn more in order to become more data analytics and data science proficient. And they were like, oh, I don't know like most of them right now because there were like all different flavors of SQL. There were like Python, R. There were like a lot of unnecessary stuff. I was focusing solely on like these buzzwords, technical names. But in reality, I understood that I didn't need so much. Indeed, I started with T-SQL, like as a SQL language, and I started with Python. And so far, I didn't need any other like Scala or R programming language at all. And having some kind of tools, and most importantly, I will second that Brian said and Alex said, being able to solve real actual problems is already enough, and trying to see it in a like broader perspective, not just you are not becoming a data analyst or a data scientist when you have this title put on with your name, but when you are trying to solve some kind of data analytics related problems, and such kind of problems can pop up everywhere. So if you want to switch to like data analytics career, try to find something that is related to data analytics in your day-to-day job and just try to learn on your own, try to solve it, try to play with data. And this is much more easier than go to like and get hired because that kind of next step. So first start small, learn at least some basics, some hands-on like Python, some SQL, whenever you need to solve this particular problem, and then move to another kind of problems, and then maybe open up yourself to a round of interviews.
Okay, that's interesting. So, Francesco, can you share with us like some of the tools, the technical skills? I'm a beginner. I want to switch, or I just left college. I know I really I'm too interested in becoming a data analyst, but I really don't know what to do to get those skills and get my first internship or my first job. Yeah.
Yeah, as Dario said, I think this is a very tricky question. We can probably start from like a real life scenario, right? So it might happen that when when you join a company as a data analyst, like it happened to me, and you know, for example, like data analysts like at Bolt or you know, even like other companies I worked for previously in my career, that you join, and at some point they're gonna ask you, "Oh, okay, well, you know, we did this A/B test for this feature here, and you know, can you analyze the results? Can you tell us if the feature is worth deploying or not?" And that's the question, really. You know, that's it, right? So now, okay, how do I answer the question, right? And very likely what's gonna happen is that you're gonna, you know, open your laptop, and then you're gonna like pull up like a Jupyter notebook or RStudio, you know, if you use R, whatever, doesn't really matter. And actually, before that, even before that, probably you're gonna open up dbeaver, which is like this like, you know, client like for SQL, and I say, okay, now I get to figure out, like, you know, where the data is, how it looks like. So what does that mean? Like SQL again, you know, no matter the dialect, as Alex said, right? Because at some point you gotta join two tables, treat them in control, get the data, and then you want to have like some metrics. You're gonna compute the metrics, and then, you know, you gotta like start typing, get your data, and understanding, you know, in dbeaver. Yeah, so SQL, good. Now you got your SQL done, you got your data. And now you move to Jupyter, you know, if you use Python, or RStudio if you use R. And you start, you know, aggregating. Let's say that you are in Jupyter, so you're a Python guy. So you're very likely going to use pandas, and then you got pandas, you got a data frame, and then you start getting some numbers, right? And then you realize, okay, that the folks in treatment got an uplift in revenue of 3% compared to control, right? Okay, good. Is it enough? Because that's the question. You didn't answer the question yet, right? So okay, I don't know. Probably I need to know some stats a little bit, right? Is it like statistically significant, that difference? Is it not? So that's where a little bit of stats is gonna help, right? You're gonna have a distribution, right? You're gonna have like, do I care about the median, the average? Did I care about outliers? Did I remove them? Um, so a little bit of stats, but again, like, you know, tools. Did I mention any? Yeah, well, a little bit. dbeaver, Jupyter, but they don't really matter. You know, at the end of the day, you know, whatever the company is not going to care. The company is going to care about like you answering the question if that feature is going to help like the business. So figure out like the tools that are needed, like, and most importantly, the knowledge that is needed to answer the question. And in my case, again, like if I had like to come up with probably like three, it would be SQL, Python, or any other programming language that helps, and then a little bit of stats, and that's about it. You know, that's I think that's what I would do.
Okay, sounds good. So we all have talked about SQL because it's the language for databases, and then Python. Then we say we can use any other programming language like R or so. So now, Brian, I would like to come to you. Can you briefly tell us, these are technical skills, but are they soft skills that you think are needed for someone to be a data analyst? Briefly give us some soft skills. Maybe we'll go around some soft skills. If you forget some, we can help, some other person can help chip in. Maybe one or
Yeah,
two.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I feel like in terms of soft skills, right? We've all kind of talked about this, but having a curiosity for understanding something. So I think that's probably the biggest soft skill because if you can be curious and you can ask good questions, those are sort of like the two that come to my mind where you need to, again, like glean insights from the data. But before that, like, is this a data question? Sometimes it could just be an engineering question of like, how do I, create a pipeline that does something? But then other times you're like, okay, I have a hypothesis. The think like going back to school, right? We learned about like the scientific method. So it's like create a problem, create a hypothesis, and there's like 11 other steps. But it's like, or eight other steps. But it's like when you are thinking that you might have an insight on something, you go back to like that to-do app. It's kind of like I think that there might be data here that is actionable. Or even like take finance data. This is something that's a little bit more like close to work that I do. But like if you wanted to analyze a certain company's performance, you think that like I don't know the P&L or EBITDA or like these other ways that you could track like a company's performance, maybe you think that that correlates to something. So maybe there's a pattern, between if this increases, this also increases. So that's that curiosity where you're like, I have an idea of something. Could we analyze these together, right? And then, of course, with soft skills, right? Like you could, use like a lot of these LLMs to sort of help you learn kind of the technicals of like, okay, if I wanted to like analyze these two things, what would I do? And the LMs could like give you some ideas of things, but that's where like we're getting into the technicals. The soft skill is really, I have an idea about something. I think that there could be a relation between this and this. Then the technicals go into that of like, okay, how do I actually go about that? But it's that curiosity and ability to ask good questions. I think that those are skills that are paramount to being a good engineer of data, but also just being a good engineer, being able to build something, right? Like you're just naturally curious. You want to explore. So those are the two that I would say are the soft skills. But I'm curious what other people think too.
Yeah, it sounds good because again, when we talk of explore, we think of exploratory data analysis. So, Alex, do you have some one or two soft skills to add to what he said, or is the same you were thinking?
Yeah, I think for me it's understanding that more often than not, people in analytical roles, engineering roles they are a translation layer between potentially something that is non-human like data, and the people that are asking for insights from it. So those communication skills, whether you're talking to maybe a very technical person like a data scientist that wants specific things from the data, like they need clean data with no outliers, these kind of things. And for you to be able to translate that into, I know how I can get that data. Or maybe you're speaking to a C-suite member and they say, I need to understand how our sales changed in Q4 versus Q3 and where the increases came from. Where should I focus for next year? So more into that kind of business analysis, business intelligence type data. But those communication skills and being able to kind of almost just turn on the taps of technical language when you need to, but also knowing when you don't need to use the deep technical language is a really, really good skill to learn. As everyone's been talking, I thought of a sort of metaphor or a nice way to describe all of this, and I like to describe it as think of it a little bit like the process of kind of cooking a meal. So when you cook a meal, you have your raw ingredients, which on their own they might mean something. They might be okay before they're combined, before they're chopped up, before they're cooked. But actually, it's quite hard to get anything from a raw ingredient. You then got your recipe, the thing that says combine carrots with pasta, with tomatoes, with olive oil, and you get your meal at the end. Your recipe is the steps that, as a data analyst, you might go through, or a data engineer, you might write your code or build your pipeline to get something at the end. And at the end of cooking your meal, you've got your dish, your thing where everything's combined, everything's hopefully tasting good in harmony with each other. And it's the same with data. You've taken your raw ingredients, data from 10, 15, 20, 50, 100 different sources, combined them together, cut it how you need to cut it, and the outcome is some insight or some piece of knowledge that wasn't available before. And I think being able to try and relate these what are often quite deeply technical processes into ways that potentially non-technical people understand is a really good skill to try and master.
Okay, thanks so much. That's very interesting. So you've really summarized it with the analogy of preparing a meal, taking data and converting it to useful information, which can give some actionable insight to the stakeholders. So that's good to know. So so talking about we've talked a lot about the curiosity and how data helps. Can you briefly, maybe Daria, can you like tell me two or three interesting applications of data analytics in any industry, maybe for someone who really doesn't really know what the data analyst would do. Okay, how is the data analyst helping a company, maybe a telecom company, a bank, or just 2 or 3 examples of what a data analyst could do that's interesting someone.
Yeah, sure. So I think that nowadays we have like like everyone said already, we have data everywhere, and it can be numbers, it can be like words, it can be like logs, and we are dealing a lot of data like in our personal life. We have like I don't know, steps track every day how many steps we are taking. Some people are counting their calories and something, yeah. But companies are also doing and they are doing a lot of more than that. They're tracking their revenues. Yeah, each company wants to be more successful this year than previous year. So this is very, very important, no matter what company does. And also, uh, they have kind of metrics and internal KPIs for their employees, whether employees are doing better than last year, and how should we like proceed, how should we adjust our hiring strategy and something like that. And to go more industry specific, I mean, it's like I'm lost in examples, but I think if we think about healthcare, yeah, it's also a company, and a healthcare company will track down their like revenues, but they will also conduct maybe some research. Yeah, and they need to know whether like a new medicine is better than the old version, and they will run tests like control group versus uh, the group that were taking the treatment, and they want to compare whether it's making people health better. So this was just a simple example, but if we think more, real examples are everywhere. And if we can even go further, if we combine this with some sort of not only what is happening, like descriptive analytics, but what is going to happen in the nearest future, like predictive analytics. And uh, one more step further, what steps should we take in order to achieve this and that? That is going to be like prescriptive analytics.
Yeah, that's interesting. So there are so many applications of data, and it's almost everywhere. Every company wants to have better revenue, reduce costs, be able to improve efficiency. So definitely, there's always work for someone with a data analytics mind. Or yeah. So we've talked about DynamoDB, lots of things concerning the cloud. So I would like to ask this question, Francesco, how important is the cloud platforms like AWS, Google, GCP, Azure for a data analyst?
It's not. I don't think it is. So it's probably not the answer. Not the answer that I should give as a AWS machine learning hero, but it's not. I don't think it is. Because again, actually there might be a difference here between like data engineer and data analyst, right? As a data engineer, you're kind of like taking care of the infra, which is like running all the data on and analytics. That's kind of different, right? But then from an analytical perspective, you don't care, really, in most cases, I would say, right? So for example, like at Bolt, we use Databricks a lot. But again, just a notebook. Honestly, I mean, I could run the same thing like on a Jupyter notebook locally. I mean, I like to run like on EC2, on a AWS machine, just because I need like GPUs, but it's nothing to do with analytics, honestly. So I could probably run like a very basic EC2 machine, just SSH into it. With VS Code, you have like a notebook, IDE experience, full IDE experience. So you don't care. I actually don't care, if that thing is running on GCP, Azure or anywhere it's running. We use Databricks. I don't even know what that thing is running, you know. I think obviously somewhere, but it works, you know. So I don't think you should care. And most importantly, probably at some point you will care because something is gonna break as always, and then you know, like Databricks is gonna throw an error like, oh, your DBU blah blah something are not sufficient, and then you're like, okay, what is a DBO, or what is, like, wait, what happened there? And now you would be forced to understand a little bit more what is the infra that you're running on, and why things broke. And at that point, then yeah, I mean, you actually should really investigate and figure it out with the data engineers or with everybody in the company who's running that kind of infra. And if it's you, then you will probably figure it out already. So, but I wouldn't over-index on cloud services here for analytics. Again, like for engineering, it's a completely different story, but for analytics, that's definitely not what I would do.
Okay, that's interesting. Thanks for that answer. So I know Alex talked briefly about certifications. So I would like to ask Alex, what do you think about certifications to become a data analyst?
So I'm really kind of, I have a bit of a polar opinion on them depending on how I feel at that point in time. So I I've been through kind of periods where I've thought, yeah, I'm gonna really knuckle down. I'm gonna try and nail every single AWS certification, get the what really isn't a very nice golden jacket. I couldn't wear it. And part of it, I think, is almost proving to yourself that you can. But I don't think they are by any means the only way to learn. And actually, they're not even necessarily a great way to learn at all. They're a great way to perhaps demonstrate to people that value certifications. So some employers value certifications, some don't. AWS, if you work for a partner, do value certifications. If you do go down the certification route, there are some advantages in that it does give you an end goal. It's something where you can structure your learning around a particular role. But I think my advice would be, if you do want to go for certifications, then great, go for them. I have my data engineer associate booked. I didn't get around to it last year, and I'm using that as an excuse to play out with some of the new data services that got released at reInvent, which won't be an exam, but it's an excuse to brush up on some of the concepts that I haven't used for a while. And that, for me, I think is the crux of it, is don't just treat them as a tick box. Use them as a reason, as an excuse if you need it to focus on your learning. If you do want to purchase courses and things like that to get through a certification, then look for those courses that are deeply practical. So some providers, I know people like Adrian Cantrill, his courses are excellent in terms of how deep the courses go. I don't know if he does one for the data certification, but certainly for things like the solutions architect ones, you learn far more than you would need to pass the certification, but it prepares you much better for a job working in that particular field. So I think again it comes back to the whole thing of kind of be curious and go and build something. A danger of sort of repeating Amazon leadership principles. The best way is genuinely learn and be curious. But kind of bringing it back to that analogy I used earlier, it's it doesn't really matter what tools you use in your execution of a recipe. You could have a set of frying pans that you've spent $10 on, or a set of frying pans that you spent $1,000 on. If you have truly mastered that art of cooking, it's not going to matter. And to Francesco's point about kind of cloud and actually these concepts being agnostic of the environment that you're running them in, it's the same again. It's the you can be a successful data analyst in AWS, in GCP, in Azure, on a laptop, on a Raspberry Pi. Like it's there are no limitations, but understanding kind of what you are doing and the goals of what you are doing is just as important as understanding how to interact with the data lake.
Thanks so much. That was very interesting. And Brian, do you have anything to add on this certification self-taught thing around data analyst? Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that getting a foundational certification can be helpful to at least ground you. But I do think that the catch-22 is that you can find yourself being highly certified, but then not having like the actual skills for implementation. So a good example of this would be, and I actually kind of started with it was AWS is like the cloud practitioner certification. So that was like my first certification. And I do think that I know it's like some people have some thoughts about it, but like I do think if you're coming completely out of tech and you basically just need like I need to like absorb understandings of tech, I do think that the certified cloud practitioner is a really great way to just be like, what is a database? What is authentication? What is object storage? How does that differ from like normal storage in like a thumb drive, right? Like these are questions that like non-technical people have. Like I was like, isn't all storage the same? And then AWS will be like, well, actually, there's like 15 different ways to store data, and you're like, wait, what? So anyways, I do think that foundational certifications are very helpful, but knowing how to implement it, I do think is much more valuable if you are trying to get hired either you're trying to do like client work, so you're trying to like pitch yourself to a company, or you're trying to get a job at a company. I do think that you could have all the certifications in the world, but if you don't know like how to use a specific EC2 instance, knowing like all of the different virtual machines in the world, right? And a really great example of this was I was doing a YouTube video on how to deploy. This was back when we had like Llama 2. Now we have like all the different Llama models, but it was like taking an LLM and deploy it to SageMaker. But there's like a specific instance that you need to run an LLM, and the reason why is because these LMs are huge. So there's so much data, so many parameters, like billions of parameters that are packed into that model. You need a very, very, very powerful VM to be able to power that. But if you know all of the different VMs, you might think like, oh, maybe I could use this one or this one. But there's a very specific instance. You could use like, you could make it more expensive if you want, but there's a specific optimized VM that's like great for that. But like you need to know how to implement that in Python to then deploy it. So that's where I do feel like sometimes you can be overly certified and then underskilled. And that's kind of where I do think as you do certifications, you should always be learning outside of the course material. Because it's like you learn these things, but then it's like, do I know the answer for a multiple choice question? Or do I actually know how to do this with code? And that's what I always try to encourage people of like certify and then test. So test yourself of like, do I actually know how to build something with this? Do I know how to do that? And again, like if you're working with like those big like LLM instances, like they're very expensive, so be very careful if you like spin those up because you do not want to start getting those anomaly emails of like, oh, it's billing like hundreds of dollars a day. That would be not ideal. Let me tell you. But I do think that just like be excited about learning because you can also overly test yourself and then you just feel like tech is about answering questions. And like, yes, we all talked about questions, but like tech is not multiple choice questions. Tech is implementing something that can reach millions of people. So I just feel like start with the certification, but then really assess, do I actually know the underlying skills behind that certification to then go and do something to solve a problem for a company?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, it's really great. I'm really getting some interesting things here. Like tech is not about multiple choice questions, but solving problems that impact millions of lives and people. So, we will be rounding up soon, but I have a couple of questions that people reached out to me, and I definitely have to ask them to you guys before you leave. Thanks for your time. So also in the chat, I see some people in the chat, Ande, Chioma, Manu, Mojoko, they are saying hi from Nigeria, from Cameroon. So you leave your questions, ask questions. We will go into the Q&A a couple of minutes before we round up. Before then, I would like to say, Daria, can you tell me common mistakes that an aspiring data analyst do so we can help them avoid these mistakes and go faster in 2025?
Sure. I think that my mistake as well, it was my mistake as well. And I see people are still asking that kind of questions. First about like technical stack. As I thought in past that I had to know like every single technology in order to be like data analyst. And I was kind of afraid to put on this hat on me because I was unsure in my knowledge, in my skills. So don't wait like 4 years in order to start doing actual task, in order to start applying for jobs, because you will learn a lot from interview process, and you will learn a lot about different companies. Not all companies are like, every single company is different, but there are like common company types, and they are looking for kind of different soft skills, and they have different workloads. So it is better if you learn it sooner than later, and don't sit and wait. As Brian said, like practice, do some like a lot of hands-on practice, and then just go for it. Don't wait until you learn everything, because we are still learning every like I'm still learning. I'm still like exploring new things every day, and this is like endless process. Just encourage yourself, like fight this imposter syndrome, and you got this.
Thanks. We need to fight the imposter syndrome. Francesco, can you add something on the mistakes to avoid for aspiring data analysts in 2025?
Yeah, absolutely. So like don't overcomplicate. Just simplify as much as possible. So the feedback loop of everything you're doing should be like as quick as possible, as fast as possible. Just make it happen, ship, simplify, learn, and then ship again, and then over and over and over and iterate as fast as you can. The moment you find yourself like stuck in a roadmap of another roadmap, of an item and there's linked another, just do it, you know? So, because nobody knows, literally. So people telling you, oh yeah, we do this and it will work. They don't know. Nobody knows until you do it, and it won't work. All right. Yes, literally any feature we have shipped or I've shipped in the past, um, stuff go wrong all the time, like all the time, like things that you didn't like. We thought we had like Confluence pages like full of Q&As and think, oh, this is gonna work, and what about this, and then like users always find that thing that you didn't think of. This is gonna break everything. All right, so just do it, you know, just ship. And the same thing with pretty much everything, you know, simplify your assumptions, and don't focus on tools, focus on inputs and outputs. And like, you know, for example, like most of my impact estimations or everything are happening in Excel, you know, you just multiply to those three numbers and you get the number and say, okay, this is worth like 1 million. Oh, wait, is it like, are you sure 1 million and probably 10,000? Like, you know, dude, really? You know, it's 1 million. Like, it's fine, more or less, right? Give or take. I was like, yeah. So it's simplify.
Okay, fine. Thanks. That's thanks. So we are going to come back to you guys with like the piece of advice that we can give to people who want to become data analysts, want to switch from maybe an existing career from chemistry, from biology, from economics, or from software development, just how somebody who wants to switch to data or start even from university, one piece of advice each of us would give. For now, I have a question. So Asta says, hello, everyone. Alex, Brian, Cyril, Daria, Francesco, thank you for the great insight. My question goes to Francesco, and the question is Excel, Power BI, and SQL okay to start your data analyst journey with? So Francesco and Daria, you guys have that question. So you're going to decide how you're going to answer that.
It is, yeah. So wait, the question is if Excel is enough, like to start, like, yeah, totally. Like,
Yeah, Excel, Power BI, and SQL, is it okay to start your data analyst journey?
oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the moment you can take an average of a column, you're good to go. It's like just totally don't think that a tool matters. Just get the average done. You know, whatever. If you even if you have to do it like by hand, it's fine. So yeah, the answer is yes. It's completely enough.
Yeah, I second that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, fine. So so that is totally enough, as we said. So we've seen that there's lots of that soft skill, curiosity, the cook thing, making sure that you take the data and get useful information in whatever way you want. The cloud must not necessarily be something you say you must need it. No need to like over certify. The certification might help you learn, have some structure in your learning, but you should try to use it to build something and solve a problem. If you're working in a company, you might want to learn by maybe taking on some tasks, some volunteer work, build something and come up with some insight. And yes, so now, while if there are any questions, leave them in the chat. We're just going to go around, and that will be just one piece of advice that you could give to anybody aspiring to become a data analyst. So, Alex, what piece of advice do you have? And we're just going to go around the alphabet again.
So my one piece of advice would be immerse yourself in a like-minded community of people. So find that community that you gel with, find a community that you can share to and learn from. Find ways that you want to pass the things that you've learned on to others that were in your situation 6 months ago, 12 months ago. And use those ways as a way to sharpen those soft skills that we've talked about today, and validate to yourself, getting rid of that imposter syndrome, that you know the technical things that you need to know.
Okay, thanks. Now Brian, now the true alphabet. Now Brian, next.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, Alex, that's a great one. I would say another one that isn't community. Community is super important, but I would say like get hyped, get excited. Like this stuff is how all of the applications like and I remember I distinctively did this when I started learning engineering and I built like a Hello World app, something like that. I literally looked at my phone and I was like, wait, all of these apps were built by engineers. All of them use data. And I started thinking like, okay, like a user creates data. The things I create in an application create data. That in and of itself is data. It's like think about like how important data is for every single application, every website, every piece of technology that you touch. That is insane. Like there's so much potential for learning these types of skills, and that's where I feel like if maybe you don't necessarily have a community that's local to you or you have a community that you can find online or something like that, like be your own motivator, like be your own cheerleader and just get excited. Think about like if I know these skills, I could do something like this one day, and then I could do something like this one day. So always just think about like what is the ceiling? And I always tell this with like my mentees, it's like think about your highest, like biggest, most aspiring goal, and then think even higher than that. That is like the level that you want to ascend to. And that's where I feel like what I would say in terms of like thinking about this is like everything that you build will always need data. So that's why I say just like get excited. go into this new year and think about building new skills. Like nothing is unlearnable. There isn't anything that's necessarily like something you can't just ask an LLM or like any of these AI applications to like help you learn something. But like knowledge is so accessible now. And I feel like especially go on YouTube, like free code camp, there's like so many resources online to learn. But like the most important thing is to just get excited and start. So that's what I would say.
Thanks. Over to you, Daria D. Yeah.
I would like to add one thing to that. We already touched upon curiosity, but I also wanted to talk about different, like slightly different side of curiosity. You just don't assume that you should know everything, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask your like business stakeholders, ask your colleagues, ask your friends. Like literally asking questions is a powerful tool, yeah, in total. And uh, also don't be afraid that you don't know something at the moment. It is it is like a great starting point. You can say to yourself, I don't know it yet, but I will go and find out how to do it.
That's interesting. So yeah, you don't know it yet, but you're going to find a way to learn how to do it. And yes, Francesco, can you give us
Yeah,
one
yeah,
advice?
sure. I think like
Okay.
on top of everything that has already been said, build stuff and write about it. I think that's the number one advice that I would give to everyone starting in pretty much any career in tech, probably even outside of tech, actually, as a matter of fact. But just like build stuff and write about it. So building allows you to learn new tech, and writing about it allows you to develop all your kind of like soft skills that are needed to make it transparent, clear, because you know it's like make yourself known like in the community. So write about it. Create a blog. Write posts about like even the most uninteresting things for yourself, because there's gonna be people in the world who are gonna find that content extremely interesting for sure. So write about it. Build and write.
Thanks so much. Thanks. We are 1 hour in exactly, and I'm so grateful for all the insights that you've shared. I hope I could share your LinkedIn in the description, and so that people can reach out to you if they want to continue this conversation. I'm sure that'll be okay by everyone. Yeah, because I know you really accepted to share your knowledge with everyone. So I'm just getting a question from Dennis. Maybe just we could answer that quickly before we go. How is AI used today by companies in data analysis? I believe maybe he's trying to see how we use AI like a data analyst, I believe. So maybe briefly, can anyone just jump in briefly and to answer that for Dennis?
I think there's loads of things that you could talk about. Just to give one example that comes with a caveat is large language models are getting pretty good at the conversion of natural language to SQL. So if you want a way to try and find something in data, then you could look at that. The reason I say it comes with the caveat is it is absolutely not a substitute for learning SQL, because without really understanding what these AI tools are generating, you can't validate they're generating safe, performant, efficient code. And it's the same with Python code, JavaScript code, whatever it is that you're using kind of co-pilots or developer agents to generate. But yeah, that said, AI is used. We've seen it used in kind of commercial settings where people can ask questions of their data. But yeah, learn the underlying tech if you're using it for yourself.
Yeah, thanks. So that you can be able to validate the responses and yeah, know when it's hallucinating or not. Okay, that's fine. So thanks so much. Any other questions? I'm sure we are going to, everybody is available. Alex is available, Daria, Francesco, Brian, they're all here for you. They're all community leaders, AWS community builders and AWS heroes. So that's what they love doing. It's their passion. That's what they do, helping out people like you. And you can always reach out to them at any time, anytime. So thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for your time. Your time has been very valuable. It was not easy to lay my hands on you all, but I'm so happy that you were able to make it. We are going to have another session same time next week for AI and machine learning. And the third week, we are going to have another session for those who want to become, start their journey in the cloud. So we are going to have different people coming and talking with us in the subsequent sessions on these other topics. So thanks so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing. And bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great conversation.
Bye. Ooh, that was cool. Yeah, we just ended the live